Well, hello, Stafford Crossing. Happy New Year. Glad you're here this morning here in a worship center. If you have us on a screen somewhere, thanks for inviting us in. I hope you got the answer to the question right. All right? And it's an important question to get started. But I'm excited today to be kicking off a brand new teaching series to start the year. But it's not just a brand new teaching series, it's also a church-wide series. And maybe you're going like, what is that? What does that mean? Well, that means we're all moving together on this journey. What is talked about and preached here on Sunday mornings will be used then as conversation to drill deeper when we're in our engaged groups during the week. And sadly, we've been unable to do this since January of 2020. And we know what happened later, right after that. But I'm glad we're back at a place because this gives us great common conversation and great momentum as we go through the year together. So I'm excited to see what God has in store. This morning, I want to lay the foundation for our series. And to start, I just want to create a little bit of tension. You see, in our culture, we have many ways of saying things that drive home the idea that what is right for you may not be right for me. And what is right for me may not be right for you. And that is the classical understanding of moral or cultural relativism. So whether you have your paper notes that you received on your way in or you're using our digital ones, capture this understanding. Cultural relativism is the position that there is no universal standard for right or wrong. No universal standard. Now, so many people are driven to do what they want, and they are going to do it when they want to. Sometimes people will say it this way: the end justifies the means. The end justifies the means, meaning we can do whatever we want if it leads us to our desired outcome, if it leads us to what we actually want. And so if we do that, basically we're the ones who are writing the law and enforcing the law. It's a win-win, right? You get to figure it out what it is, and you get to determine if you're doing it or not. Let me just see if I can illustrate some ways that this might play out in real life. I love my dog, and I want Fido to go with me everywhere I go. Now, we never say that about a cat, but we do with our dogs, right? And so I want Fido to go with me. But you know, some of the places I go, they have this little poster, this little sign that says, service dogs only. But come on, man. I mean, Fido's a good dog, and we're pals, and he likes to get out of the house. He likes to get in the truck and go places. And I've got this place this place called Amazon, and they have these vests that you can buy for your dog, and it says service dog. And I'll just get one there so I can take Fido with me. No, I mean, really, it's no harm, right? I love watching movies. But who in their right mind would pay for their own Netflix account when you can use a friend's? Right? Who would do such a crazy thing as that? I mean, seriously, listen, I don't watch that many movies. I don't watch that many. It's not going to hurt anyone. And you know how it goes. Before you know it, there's 14 households on the same account. You've got a shared Google Calendar trying to figure out who can use the account on what nights, right? You know how this snowball goes. You're getting ready to take your vehicle for its annual state safety inspection. And it seems like every time you take this vehicle in for its annual inspection, one of those blasted yellow light illuminates your instrument cluster panel. And it's like, oh, you tried to ethically, morally, responsibly clear the codes with some local person and drive it the right number of miles, before you go back. It just didn't seem to work. And I can't get to the bulb in this one. What if I just put a piece of tape over it? I bet they'll never see that. Surely, no, they wouldn't see that. No, they won't look. Some of you may have already submitted your income taxes. You're like, I've got to pay off my Christmas bills. And you're on top of this thing, and you've already figured it out, and you're going. Others of us are going to be doing so in the next few months because we are going to keep our money until we have to pay it. But where do you try to cut corners when it comes to taxes? What income do you try not to report? It's like, hey, I'm going to do that side job, or for some people I've heard, I'll do the job for X, but it's cash only. One of those, cash only. Speaking of taxes, I'm not sure you're aware that in 1950, the IRS established something called the Conscience Fund. The Conscience Fund. And what it's created for is people could send in money to the IRS anonymously if they had cheated the government out of some tax money. One dude sent the IRS $150. He said, I was so guilty I couldn't sleep. If I still can't sleep, I'll send the rest. Students, plagiarism is a big deal. It's a big deal. Now teachers use plagiarism checkers to verify your work. And with the growing popularity of AI, you can actually speak into a web browser and it can write stuff for you. It's like, oh, this is crazy. Here's something that's really, really ironic if you've been following the news. I was typing this paragraph on December the 21st, okay, to get ready for today. And as I was typing it, I got a notification on my phone, my news service alert, and it said this: Harvard admits more instances of duplicative language found in President Gay's work. Now, obviously, I had to do a bit of reading. Okay, this is the president of Harvard. She's been busted for, plagiarism. I found out in reading this past week, she resigned. I was like, oh, okay. So we go to an all-you-can-eat buffet, and there's no plate sharing. And then there's a person who's with us, and they just purchase a single meal, right? They just got a regular old meal, but yet when we get up to go to the dessert bar, we say, can I get you something? The family's out to eat. You go to the restaurants, you know where they are if you're a parent or a grandparent, and kids 12 and under eat free. Man, Junior just turned 13. He doesn't eat that much. It's just a couple months after his birthday. Hey, buddy, if the waitress asks how old you are, you're 12. No, Dad, I'm 13. No, you're 12 today. When I was a student pastor, we were on a mission trip to Michigan. And I did that for 11 years before God led me to start Stafford Crossing. And we were on a trip. And so we had a stopping point, and we had multiple vans. Students could disperse between multiple restaurants. Then when the departure time was set, once my 14 passengers were in my van and the others were in theirs, we pull out, and we start to roll to our next stop. And then I hear some chatter about how a student got a dessert for his birthday. I was like, dude, I had no idea today was your birthday. It's not, Daryl. I just wanted a free dessert. The van made a loop at the light that I was driving, came back to the restaurant, put it in park, turned the engine off. I said, Matt, as soon as you go in and pay for the dessert you stole, we'll continue. I stole something? Yeah, you lied and stole. It's a double barrel. And he went in and paid. We go to McDonald's, get a hamburger, ask for, one of those nice little free cups up at the counter. And on our way to our table, we fill it with water, right? No, soda. And I got one of those free cups. It's like, they'll never know. This is a little soda. High profit margin for them. Never miss it. I was actually at Chick-fil-A a couple weeks ago between appointments. And I was standing in line to place my order. And as I'm standing in line, I'm looking out the window, and I see a car. I was down in Spotsy. Goes down, makes a turn, comes around the Hotel Lake, O'Connell Lodge, whatever's there, and then comes into the parking lot, and the dude gets out of the car, has his Chick-fil-A cup, walks in the front door, goes up to the counter, says, I'd like a little bit of ice and sweet tea, please. The worker does what he asks. He exits the door. He goes out, gets in his car, and drives off. You can't make this stuff up, people. You only thought people at Walmart had videos. We're going to have to expand our watching to Chick-fil-A people now. Now listen, sometimes we as employees lack integrity. We're paid, right, to go to work. We're paid to do a job. That's what we're paid to do. But, man, scrolling Facebook, we got to stay up to date. How many Christmas gifts were purchased on the clock this past Christmas? How many fantasy football leagues are monitored and teams traded on the clock? How many March Madness brackets are you going to fill out on the clock this year? But it's just, A couple of employee stories that resonate in my recent history. Earlier this year, I was down at the DMV. And I purchased a car just a few years ago, my truck actually, and I wanted to add Gina's name to the title. She wasn't with me when I purchased it. And so I have the title, I have the necessary paperwork, I am in a folder. I go and I pre-register, of course, because I don't want to waste much time. I sit down, wait for my number to get called. I go up to the window. I hand this nice lady my title and my paper. She starts, oh, sir. Your wife's signature needs to be right here. And she found this microcosmic box. It's like, what? You're right. And I let out an audibly loud groan, like, oh! Everybody's like, what's happening here? She said, what's the problem? I said, my wife's at home. No, she's not. Yeah, my wife's at home. No, your wife's in the truck. Go have her sign it and bring it back in. You with me? Yeah, just making sure you're with me. One more. My mother is moving to Fredericksburg this coming week, and excited about that. And this past December, last month, I'm out shopping for her a chair and a sofa. And there was actually a half-price sale at a local furniture store. And so I had taken a picture of these half-price items. I walk in, and they're excited to see somebody that wants to purchase something, and I'm an easy sell if you play by my rules. And I said, hey, I noticed you had a half-price sale. I want to look at these two items. There's only one caveat. Do not show me anything that cannot be delivered on the exact date of January 13th. Okay. We walked through the store. I said, yep, that's the chair. What color options do I have? Okay, it's that one. Okay, next, the sofa. Well, that sofa's out of stock. I said, oh, that's a problem. Well, what about this love seat? No, I didn't really want a love seat. She comes back and says, oh, here's one right here. It's the same price. Okay, it looks solid. What are my options? I'll take that color. We go now, fast forward, we're filling out the paperwork. She hands me back a piece of paper that has a quote on it. And it has down there at the little bottom, delivery fee, $199. If you know me, you know that probably hits me right where it hurts. You don't have to be a Dave Ramsey graduate to know that that's not going to work well for Daryl. And so I go up and I have this little conversation. I said, well, what? I have a truck. I even have a trailer. I'll pick it up. Well, sir, you can pick up the chair, but it's against company policy for you to pick up the sofa. Oh, that's a problem. That's $199. I think she could see redness, possibly, and my feet starting to get a little twitchy, like I might be walking. She said, are you active duty military? No, ma'am. Are you active duty military? I said, the answer hadn't changed. I'm not. For this moment, you are. Yes, ma'am. What do you do with that, right? What do you do with that? Folks, I could go on and on with scenarios and stories, but I think I have your attention. I think I've made the case and made the point that in our culture, integrity is lacking. But let me make it just a little bit more personal. Each one of us has the possibility for our personal integrity to fail. How do we guard against that? Today, I want us to see that there is something inside of us, and ought to, that prompts us to do what is right, even when no one is looking. Now, as I lay the foundation for this series, I want us to give us a working definition of integrity. We're going to use this for the next 5 weeks. Integrity is simply the resolve and the courage to do the right and noble thing just because it is the right and noble thing to do. I'm just going to do the right and noble thing because it's the right and noble thing, whether it benefits me or whether it costs me. Whether it benefits us or costs us. And this idea of integrity is what lays a foundation from which we make our decisions. It's foundational. Let me see if I can illustrate it. Are there any engineers here in the room? Any engineer types? Back there, over here. If you're watching, I can't see your hand. See there? Okay, good. Well, you're probably familiar with the concept of structural integrity, which is a building science phrase. I put the definition on your sermon notes. Here it is. Next slide, please. Structural integrity is the ability of a structure to withstand its intended load without failing due to fracture or fatigue, to keep it from crashing. Now, Daniel Francis raised his hand, which he should have. He is an engineer, member of our church, and he's been very involved in the building of the new 301 bridge and the destruction of the old 301 bridge. And he and I have had some conversations about what this looks like, and I've seen some incredible videos. Looks like a lot of fun. I'd have to take Dramamine, so I'll just look at videos. But it's just phenomenal to watch the process. And it blows my mind to say, dude, how can you drive a pile hundreds of feet through water, hit ground again, support it, strengthen it, and actually provide us something safe to drive on? I don't get that. Now, you may have a bridge phobia now, but that's not my problem. But it's like, how does this work? What does this look like? And he was so kind and gracious, man. He started sending me videos on YouTube. He sent me pictures. And, man, in my mind, I've got all of these images and all these phrases. And I'm like, man, I know the difference between a pile and a column and a cap and a girder and a deck. I mean, I got educated. In fact, this year, I'm going to build a bridge. I'm going to go down Route 17 right through Celebrate, Virginia, and cross the Rappahannock. Can I get a hand for that, right? Yeah. That's my platform campaign speech, and I'm sticking to it. Now, locally, we have endured the building or the lack of integrity in a bridge. Like for the last 18 years, the William Street Bridge has been closed, it felt like, right? It felt like it was forever. If you ever go downtown Fredericksburg, if you know where the William Street Bridge is, like, oh, it's closed again. Still closed. Why was it closed? It was closed because of a lack of structural integrity. That's why it was closed. When a bridge fails inspection, there is a structural issue that says this bridge is not able to bear the load that it was designed to bear. So this weakening of this bridge now is not isolated to a specific beam. It's not isolated to a specific column. The entire structure is impacted. Because what happens when there is a weakening in one area, that load gets transferred to another point, to another area. And that area is not designed to carry that much load. So when this happens, there's a potential for an overload because of the impact to adjacent components. So in layman's terms, the failure of one part impacts other parts because the stress gets transferred. Now, I want us to understand this morning that what is true of a bridge or what is true of a building is also true for me, and it's also true for you. When we have a failure of personal integrity, we add stress to the people around us. When we have a failure, it adds stress. When a spouse commits adultery, there is a failure of personal integrity that transfers the stress to other people in the home. The family, in essence, feels that effect. When someone in the family becomes an addict, there is a failure of personal integrity that transfers the stress to the people closest to them, and once again, the entire family feels the effects. See, the point of our integrity is simply this. When there is a breach in my integrity, when there is a breach in your integrity, the load is always transferred. It's transferred. Our personal failure of integrity impacts other people. The consequences are never isolated. And from there is where we get the phrase, your world, in our series. It impacts everyone around us. Wherever you live, wherever you work, wherever you play, every one of those relationships feels the impact if there is a lack or a loss of integrity by you. Now remember, integrity is the resolve and the courage to do the right and noble thing just because it is the right and noble thing to do. Which generates a very intriguing question. Why do some people live with rigorous integrity? And why do others live with haphazardous integrity? Why is that? Let's go back to the idea, the illustration about an employee. who is paid to work, but they're scrolling social media, shopping online while on the clock. They're actually eating up the employer's resources. But when the paycheck comes every couple of weeks, they expect their employer to actually pay them exactly what they agreed to previously. They may cheat their employer at work, but by golly, my employer better not try to cheat me, because if they're missing one line of commission, if they're missing one cell, if they're missing 1 hour, I'm in HR's face. That money's due me. Why? Because regardless of our personal integrity, we have an expectation that people treat us right regardless of how we might treat them. Even though we do not apply universally, we know there is a way we ought to live. We might give ourselves broad freedom, great liberties, but man, we hold other people way up here. We hold them to a high level, high standard of accountability. See, integrity assumes an ought to, that we assume everyone around us is accountable to. Here's what that means. Do you expect people you interact with to tell you the truth? You can answer this. Yeah, you do. Do you expect people that you make business deals with to actually come through on the deal? You expect them to honor the contract. If you gave the contractor $10,000 and they say, yeah, that's a down payment, and they go out and buy some materials, they show up and do the job, you're like, thank you. If they don't show up to do the job and you have your $10,000, you're not happy. That's a problem. When someone tells us they are going to do something, we actually expect them to do it. Yeah. See, integrity assumes an ought to, that we assume everyone around us is accountable to. Now, here's where the uncertainty enters the equation. Ought to. What is ought to? Who gets to define ought to? What's the basis for knowing right from wrong? Who gets to decide? I mean, we do not want to hear somebody say, yeah, I lied to you, so what? I really don't understand the big deal about that. Or, yeah, I cheated on you, so what? What's the big deal about that? See, when we are lied to, when we are cheated on, when we are disappointed in how someone treated us, does our anger, does our outrage, does our disappointment come from anything or rest on anything more substantial than our personal opinion or our personal conviction? You see, there is an ought to that stands outside of us and over us, and this ought to did not originate within us. There's an ought to. We react to ought to. Whenever someone says, whenever someone else says, I don't think you ought to, what is the basis? What is the foundation for their authority? Or when I say that, we react to ought to whenever someone does not do what they ought to, or hurts someone, or hurts us. So determining what's at the bottom of integrity, what integrity is built on, has huge ramifications. So let's get this. If integrity is not connected to anything, if our integrity is not supported by anything, if it's not grounded in anything other than just my opinion or my desires, if it's not grounded, as we're going to see in just a moment, in the divine, then having integrity is just a wasted exercise. If there's no external ought to. If there's no external ought, the foundation of our world would actually crumble. Go back to the bridge illustration. If that bridge isn't built by industry-safe standards, it'd be like 50-50. I'm driving my car. Man, I hope this bridge has a stamp of approval, that it was built to code and to spec. As I drive over it, I'm alive. But man, what if this one doesn't have the state safety inspection stamp and I drive over it and it crumbles, I die. Integrity matters. Who gets to decide? How's it going to be determined? If there's no external ought, then integrity will be defined and redefined by personal opinion or public opinion. If it will be defined and redefined just by majority rule. I think we might say that's sort of where we find ourselves today in our culture. See, because if there is no divine lawgiver, then we cannot hold other people responsible. We cannot judge them because there's no objective standard by which to judge them. We're just judging them based on our opinion, our wish, our desires, our life experience, the way we were raised. So at the end of the day, we cannot judge other people who see the world differently than us. We're just holding them accountable to something we just made up. Unless there is an ought to that resides over us, that guides us, that did not originate within us. There's a prophet in the Bible that speaks to this situation. So we've created a little attention, setting up our series. This is just foundational. We're going to build on this foundation for the next 5 weeks. But there is a prophet in the Bible who explains why we are so prone to self-deception, why we are so prone toward losing our integrity, why we're so good at selling ourselves on the reality that a bad idea is a good idea. His name's Jeremiah. And in chapter 7, we read, "The heart is deceitful above all things and beyond cure. Who can understand it? I, the Lord, search the heart and examine the mind to reward a man according to his conduct, according to what his deeds deserve." Now, this is hard. It's hard to hear. Your heart, my heart, those precious little children of yours, their hearts. Their hearts are what? Deceitful above all things. You don't have to tell your 3-year-old to hide something and to lie and to steal a toy and to pretend it's his. They just know. They're good at it. Jeremiah chose his adjective very carefully. There's a difference between being dishonest and being deceitful. Being dishonest is a little easier to see. If you're deceitful, it's harder. Dishonest basically just says, not good at being honest. Just not that honest. But deceitful usually is a mix of truth and half-truth and untruth. There's a difference. So let's take a quick journey about how we know the right thing to do. First book of the Bible, the book of Genesis. We read God's creative handiwork, right? Out of nothing, God created everything. And the crowning achievement of his creation were these two people, Adam and Eve. And we understand that it did not take long in human history for things to go south, like way south. Adam and Eve didn't even make it, right? That's where sin enters the world. That's where integrity crumbles. That's where integrity gets cracked. Things get so jacked up, so messed up, God's like, okay, I'm going to start over. And there's a flood. And everybody dies except Noah, righteous man Noah, and his family. But that's not the end of humanity's deceitfulness and lack of integrity. We read in the book of Exodus that God gives a man by the name of Moses the law. He gives him the 10 Commandments. And these are laws that are going to be used to guide and nurture the nation of Israel and to create within the nation of Israel people, a holy people, a special people, a people from whom the Messiah would come, Jesus. And here's what we read about these 2 tablets of stone, these 10 commandments that were going to be guiding the people. When the Lord finished speaking to Moses on Mount Sinai, he gave him 2 tablets of the testimony, the tablets of stone inscribed by the very finger of God. See, these external laws were given by God to a people he was forming for a special purpose and a calling. Now, we get to the New Testament. Do we see these? Do we see the Ten Commandments? They're summarized quite nicely into love God and love others. If you have a column with love God, a column with love others, you can nicely realize that the Ten Commandments fit there beautifully. But there's a shift that begins to where God's like, that is not going to be the way I guide my people for all time. I was creating a special people. There's something new, something different coming. And so we're going to turn over to the book of Jeremiah, chapter 31. This is the covenant I will make with the house of Israel after that time, declares the Lord. After we move from the old covenant into the new covenant, I will put my law in their minds and write it on their hearts. I will be their God and they will be my people. You see, there's a difference between writing God's law on tablets of stone and writing it in the hearts and the minds of his people. That is the transition and the change that is happening. Our staff was reflecting on Christmas at our staff prayer time this past Tuesday, and just celebrating the fact that in our 4 Christmas Eve services, if you were here or watching, you know that people had options to make where they really were in their life. And as people exited, there was a tree on a white piece of butcher paper. 32 people said that I'm exchanging my life for new life in God. 32 people. Yeah, it's worth clapping about, Melanie. It is. It's a yay, God. It's a God moment. Those 32 people right now have the living, active God writing on their hearts. Hey, we wasn't 2 weeks ago. I don't know what was guiding them, but now God is writing on their hearts and on their minds. Now, under the under the old covenant, the people of God were given laws written on tablets of stone. I can imagine the people looking at these stones and going like, wow, these are great laws. Do not kill, do not steal, do not commit adultery. Man, if we lived like that, it would be a great society. That would be a place I would want to live. And then they tried to live like that. They tried to obey and follow, and they failed. Consistently, I might add. So God says, I'm going to do something new. Instead of the law being outside of you, I'm going to put the law inside of you. And what you do will come from your heart. How does this happen? How does God do it? Over to the next prophet, the book of Ezekiel. Chapter 36, I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit in you. I will remove from you your heart of stone. I'm going to take out those 2 stone tablets that are guiding you, and instead I'm going to put a heart of flesh in you, and I'll put my spirit in you and move you to follow my decrees and be careful to keep my laws. So God takes out the heart of stone that is hard, impenetrable, and he puts in a heart of flesh, something that is soft and moldable and pliable, shapeable. And this is how now I am going to guide my people from the inside out. Now, the Israelites, they had their consciences fine-tuned to the law of God. And I mean, folks, it was fine-tuned. But it proved to be ineffective. So God moved to write his path, his way, on their hearts and on their minds. And then we get to the New Testament. And this is one of the passages where Paul captures what this looks like, how it will be lived out. He says in chapter 3, since then, you have been raised with Christ. Set your hearts on things above where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. Set your mind on things above, not on earthly things. You see how heart and mind is brought in, just like we see back in the book of Ezekiel. Now, most of us in this room are Gentiles. There might be a Jew or two by heritage or lineage. I know a couple that are in our church. But when Gentiles who do not have the law trust and follow Jesus, somehow they instinctively start to do things differently, things that are actually required by the law. They just somehow become more honest. They quit stealing. They quit cheating. They begin to live more ethical lives. Their consciences began to be fine-tuned, not to the law as was given to the Jews, but God is doing something on the inside. They just know this doesn't seem right. Last story from Scripture. I don't have time to read the passage, but Luke chapter 19. There's a story there about a guy that was just really short. He had a short man complex named Zacchaeus. Here's some of the highlights. Besides being a short dude, he was a tax collector. That's different from what we experience today where we have the internet and the IRS and we send forms, they send forms, yada, yada. No. He would go and he would go, you owe me $150. I'm taking that money to the Roman government. But today for you, it's $200. No. You told me my bill was $150. You want to die or give me $200? Okay, here's my $200. And Zacchaeus became a rich little man because he would pocket the 50 and then he would pay the Roman government what was actually due. Now, Zacchaeus never had a problem stealing from people. Never had that problem. Zacchaeus even knew the law. He'd memorized the first 5 books. He was a good Jew. What changed? What changed for him? He had stolen. Then he meets Jesus and says, I'm going to give everything back to anybody I stole from. And I'm going to multiply it times 4. If I stole $100 from you, Casey, I'm giving you $400. That's what I'm going to do. Why this change in his life? He had not been discipled by anyone. Nobody had sat down and done a Bible study with him and said, you don't steal from people. He hadn't gone down to the local community church and found the latest hip dude with skinny jeans who said, no, you don't do that. No. What changed? He met Jesus and his eyes were opened. That's what happens when people encounter the living God. Things change. The ought to suddenly is inside of you. It is not objective. It's not subjective. God writes on our hearts and in our minds. Once we encounter Jesus, our conscience is fine-tuned to the divine law of God, which becomes the foundation of our integrity. Jesus becomes this source of this inescapable ought to. Now, maybe you're here or maybe you're watching and you're not a follower of Jesus. And you may be going, thank God I'm not. It looks like a miserable way to live. Look at what I'd have to give up, man. I mean, I'm living the life. Dude, I don't care if I steal on my taxes. You know what the government pays for a hammer these days? I'm going to keep all the money I can, even if it's not legal or ethical or filled with integrity. I like my life the way it is. Can I ask you to ponder something, to consider something? Would you graciously give us the next 5 weeks? Join us and just explore and see if there just might be a better way. Just to be open. Maybe you're here as a follower of Jesus and you go down that slippery slope of, I'm not as bad as my neighbor. I mean, we're only sharing 4 Netflix accounts. They're sharing 10. I mean, come on. I'm not that bad. Really, I'm not. Can I ask you to prayerfully consider, when you start playing that game, not being as bad, who gets to choose? Who gets to decide what's good and what's bad? Who gets to choose that? Who gets to decide what's good enough? Wrapping up, integrity. We expect it, we celebrate it. The question is, how do we get it? Or for some, the question is, how do we get it back? How do we model it for our kids? How do we guard it? And that's the journey we're going to be on. Do not miss next week. We're going to explore how to position integrity as a guide in our life. Right now, we're going to stand and worship one last time. Let me ask you to come up to your feet. We're going to worship a great God who shows us, puts it in our hearts and on our minds, how to live for him. Let's worship.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Make sure you come back next week as we dive back into God's Word together. Have a great day.